Good afternoon, colleagues, friends. Can I just get a thumbs up from the team, whether they can hear me?
You may go ahead, Dr. Crawford.
Thank you. You're all there. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Quite an exciting event that we've all been looking forward to. We struggled a bit with the technology in this, after how many years of COVID, we still experience that. But let me just start by saying welcome to each and every one of you. And this afternoon, we are very happy to have as our guest speaker, Pieter Geldenhuys. He's the founder and director of the Institute for Technology, Strategy and Innovation here in South Africa. As you've seen in his bio, Pieter is globally recognized futurist and strategist deeply involved in exploring the intersection of technology, innovation and the future of work. He's recognized globally as a futurist and strategist serving on the faculty of renowned business schools, including the London Business School, Cornell and Duke. And I've already said that he's the director of ITSE. And he's been involved in various projects. He led 150 innovation projects, educated over 5,000 students across major technology companies in India, the Middle East, and Africa. Sorry, the mic. Has been registered in technology strategy, including fintech and AI masterclasses. I think that is sufficiently said. To illustrate or share with you that really in good hands this afternoon. Pieter, without further ado, I would like to hand the stage to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crawford, and a hearty good afternoon to all of you. What I will be doing is I'm going to share two computer screens with you. The one is a little Mac that I can simply click over to and then come back to you to discuss certain difficult context. And the other one is my current computer that I will switch to just make sure that the screen that you are seeing is optimized so that it fills the screen. Without further ado, let's get started on our journey. What we're going to be talking about is artificial intelligence, and specifically the impact of generative AI, the so-called large language models, and the impact this will have on the future of work, the future of education. What are the key things that you need to prepare for in this fast-changing world? And in order to give you a very good idea of what you're up against, we need to start taking a look at where AI came from and how does it work? What does it do well and what doesn't it do well? And within that, have a discussion around where is the future of AI. I think there's a wonderful opportunity after this keynote to have a panel that will discuss all of this. So please, if you have any questions in the meantime, please put it in the chat. And when I finish my presentation, we will then revert back to your questions and answer them to the best of our capabilities. So let's get started on this journey. What will the future of artificial intelligence look like? Well, we're going to look at the following agenda: a brief introduction, what is a brief history of artificial intelligence, the different types of AI, and then we're going to talk about the impact that narrow AI had on our world in the last decade or so. We're then going to pivot towards transformer models, the so-called ChatGPT or Claude or Chinchilla models. We're going to talk about how this changed our world, some of the fantastic things that were exposed in the last couple of years. And then we're going to make it really practical by talking about how will it change the world of work, how will it change the world of business, and how will it change the skill set requirements from the future. And that's a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. So let's get started on our journey. So why did we call it artificial intelligence? And this is very concerning because artificial means fake. So is it fake intelligence? Well, it all goes back to a guy by the name of John McCarthy. And in 1955, he wanted to create a summer camp where he and a couple of academics could then discuss this ability of computers to do certain calculations and mimic what we do as humans. And he couldn't come up with a name. So he was trying to get some funding from the Rockefeller Institute. And then he came up with this idea called artificial intelligence. Now, what a poor choice of words. But we all know by now once you give something a name, we call it this. And unfortunately, it's not a very good description of what this technology is. But we landed with it nonetheless. And what is really interesting to note is that computers can't really drive cars. I mean, Apple just said they're going to give up on their car project. They spent billions and then they realized, driving a car is really difficult. Now, I know you would not argue with me if I say, if you get your driver's license and you start driving, people start calling you intelligent or super intelligent or a genius. No, it's not at all. It's just something we as humans do. Millions, and in actual case, billions of us drive a car. Does that mean we are super intelligent? Well, it's a skill, but a computer can't actually copy the skill yet. There's some element of self-driving behavior, but it's unbelievably difficult for a computer to drive a car, which for us as humans are quite simple. So that really means that there are some problems where computers can't solve it. And doesn't matter what type of intelligence we call it, they can't copy our behavior. So some problems that are very mundane for us is unbelievably difficult for computers. Nonetheless, that's why they called it artificial intelligence, based on a summer school they had in 1955. But let's go and talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning and what we used it for in the last couple of years. So when I show you this picture, most of us here in South Africa would immediately know it's Madiba, Nelson Mandela. If we want to train a computer to identify this photo and link the name Nelson Mandela to that photo, we need to train it. And that's the whole thing. Again, a name that's really dumb. Machine learning is this kind of a machine sitting in a closet trying to figure out something? Not at all. It is a computer that we give certain inputs to, and we have certain outputs. We know what the input stream is, and we train the computer on this input stream, and we tell it that's the output stream. So we will give multiple photos of Madiba, and then finally we'll say, but let's give you an example or a test. In the last photo, would you classify that as Nelson Mandela? Now, this is what we call supervised learning. We know what the inputs are, we know what the likely outputs are, and that's called supervised learning. And we utilize two types of technologies here, neural networks and deep learning. But the key message I want to get across to you is that for a computer to be useful, we need to train it. We need to give it the necessary training. And based on this training, it can then give us useful results we as humans can use. This input-output pairs are quite simple. We give you this, and we want that as an output. So for the last 25 years or 20 years, we started to use this technology with great success. We started in 2005 with these type of neural networks that could identify pictures, and it really started picking up steam here by 2015. And the benefit is that we could utilize this capabilities to show it a scan of a brain scan or a lung scan or a heart scan or a ultra, infrared scan. And we can ask the computer to identify certain patterns. Very, very useful in terms of its capability. But let me go and show you how it learns and how do we train these models. Well, one of the important things we need to realize is that this is literally a classification task. When we ask it to look at a specific picture, one of the outputs is to classify it as a specific individual. So when we talk about these so-called classification tasks, we really see that the technology have grown in leaps and bounds over the last couple of years, to such an extent where we don't really need artificial intelligence anymore in order to recognize what happens on a picture. After we've trained the model, and I'll explain how we train the model in a moment, once that model has been trained, I can then build it into my phone. And all I need to do is to retrain my phone with my face, and it will be unlocked. Let me show you a brief picture or a brief video on what some intelligent cameras are doing. And this will happen on the camera itself. It doesn't need to connect to a big server or run any AI protocols. It's an algorithm that allows it to identify everything in this picture, from cars to bicycles to movement to IP addresses to humans to colors. Everything can be analyzed by looking at this video clip. And that is what we call the classification of data. And how did we get our computer to be able to do it? We use something called a neural network. Now, a neural network is a manifestation of what happens in our brains. For example, in our brains, there's 86 billion neurons that connect, and each neuron connects with upwards of 8,000 other neurons. And let me just briefly explain how it would work. There are, there's a very important mindset that if we can utilize this framework, the so-called neural network, and mimic it on a computer, we can then train a computer to identify a picture. And that's exactly what has been done. So let me give you an idea. We'll take a look at a pixel somewhere on the screen. And when this pixel sees red, it will then send a command to all of the other neurons in layer 1 it has been connected to, saying, I saw red. Now, if only a few of these neurons identify red, then these other neurons are not going to bother about it. But if the majority of these neurons see red, then the second layer will then say, aha, I've got a feedback that they saw red, and they will then send through a message to the next layer. Now, this is a very elementary explanation of a neural network, but that's literally what it does. So two individuals by the name of Malcolm and Pitts, they played around with this concept, and they said, but this looks like electric circuit. So can we mimic this in an electric environment or in a computer environment? That's exactly what they did. And when we look at these neural networks, so in our human brain, it can connect up to 8,000 other neurons. In some of the later computer programs, some of these neurons can connect to more than 1 million of these other layers in the next layer. And that is what we can do. Time and time again, these computers can then run through these programs or iterations of the program until it then creates a model that's very good at recognizing pictures. Let me give you a quick insight into what I mean. Now, there's one key difference between human intelligence and computer intelligence, and that is that computers do not mind making a mistake. They can make the same mistake over and over and over and over and over again, and they don't actually feel ashamed at all. We as humans, we normally don't want to do is, make the same mistake over and over again. And I wish someone would have told me that while I was dating in my 20s, but let's leave that one there. The important thing is that when a computer model, so these so-called neural networks, and there's a whole variety of them, let me briefly show you on the screen. There's a variety of these neural networks. These are the models. And then we put values into each one of those circles. We call it a node. And each one of those arrows that connect to the other nodes, we call them edges. What would then happen is we would give a specific value to the node, and we would give a value to the edge it connects to. And then we would say, let's go and see if this model, and you can see it manifested as a matrix at the bottom of the screen. This is how computers would use the data. We can then iterate one value. So this node you see at the top, we can say the next time around, we're going to make it 20. Let's see if we train the model, if we are more accurate, we are able to more accurately predict what's happening in this picture. So the moment we change the value, the computer runs through the entire process, sometimes in parallel, and then it comes up with a result and say, no, it wasn't better. And we say, okay, let's do it again. But this time we'll change it from 20 to 19. Let's do the thing all over again. And the computer would literally go through this process 1 billion times until it finds the optimal model. And that then becomes a mathematical and a statistical explanation of how a computer can understand what's happening in a picture, utilizing these neural networks. And one of the key elements we need to realize is what is driving the current success in our ecosystem are 3 things. One, the models, these so-called models that I've showed you on the previous screen, these different types of neural networks, the Markov chains or a perception model or a feed-forward model. Any of these models are some of the models we can use. And most of these models were conceptualized in the 1960s and 1970s. We never had the computing power, however, nor the data. And suddenly, with the explosion of the internet and with the explosion of computing power, finally, all 3 things were in place. And that allowed us, in order to create wonderful, wonderful applications utilizing models, computing power, and data. Getting back to the difference between human and computer intelligence, we as humans use logic and reason, and out of that, we then extrapolate in order to come up with other ideas. Computers can't do that. Computers can't extrapolate in the same sense that we can. And this is the key difference between humans, because once we make a mistake, we veer away from it. Computers, on the other hand, it doesn't cost a lot of money to make a mistake. It's a few cents of electricity being used to make a mistake, and it can do it over and over and over and over again. We as humans can't do that. And that means that due to this unbelievable abundance of computing power, computers are better at us looking at patterns, pattern recognition. It therefore makes a lot of sense to put a computer at an entry port into a country, let that scan your passport, and that means that the humans that would normally sit there and just look at your picture every day could now be used to do something of more value. For example, looking at smuggling and a variety of other challenges that the custom agents are faced with. So it means that in terms of pattern recognition, computers are really, really good because it created these models to create pattern recognition. And in a lot of cases, it is better than what humans are in terms of pattern recognition. This could be speech recognition, image recognition, or a variety of other capabilities. So we had all of these major breakthroughs in the last couple of years. And these breakthroughs from about 2012 were all based on something we call narrow AI. And this means we utilized it in order to identify language. That's why I can speak to my phone. I can speak to my little home computer to switch off the lights and switch on the lights. So I can say, hey, Google, switch on the lights. And then the lights will be switched on. Or I can switch on the air conditioner or switch it off simply using my voice, and it can detect my voice. We've utilized this to great value in a variety of applications. I'm going to share some of that with you in a moment. But the most important message is that the so-called utilization of AI to understand language was never really, really breached. And then all of this happened or changed by 2017 with a very important paper called Attention is All You Need. And suddenly we started realizing that computers can do so much more than the narrow AI that we trained it on. A little bit more about that in a moment. So let's go and take a brief look at what this means in terms of our agenda. Well, we've done a quick history of AI. Let's go take a look at some of the different types. And one of the important things that you need to realize is that when we train computers to create, and that was one of the key challenges that was faced and questioned by a number of people in years past. Can computers create? Let me swap to another computer, and then let's briefly speak about what that means. So when we talk about can computers create, that's the key question. I just want to make sure that I've got my audio switched on. And there's this wonderful movie called iRobot. And what iRobot did, I just want to make sure that you see my screen correctly. In iRobot, there was this fantastic scene where they asked the robot, but can you as a robot create, yes or no? And the challenge that was faced by the actor, Will Smith, was to say, yes, but can you as a human create? And that literally threw him off. But that was before we started looking at narrow AI. And what happened with narrow AI is that it started allowing us to create in a slightly different context to what we normally thought of. Let me give you a quick overview of what I'm talking about. So here's a brief video of Watson, and let me show you how it creates. Can you see the video?
Perfect. We can hear the sound too. Thank you.
Its first birthday. It exceeded our wildest expectations.
Nice to meet you, Morgan.
Nice to meet you, Lee. I have a 13-year-old daughter. You don't get to see her much anymore.
What?
Don't you go down there, Skip! Don't be afraid, Amy. I have to go say goodbye to Mother.
And what you just witnessed was the very first trailer that was generated by AI.
Fox approached IBM.
And what's really interesting about this is that when we take a look at how this changed the ecosystem, it meant that an entire new era opened up because now humans could create. I just want to make sure, can you still hear me on your end? I just lost the visuals there for a moment. It all looks good. Can all of you still hear me?
We can hear you clearly, Mr. Geldenhuys. Thank you.
Wonderful. So that one video you just saw was the very first time an AI agent created a trailer from a movie. And let me explain how it did so. You see, you have 10,000 movies and 10,000 trailers, and then you give it to one of these AI models and say, look at the patterns and the similarities between the connection of a trailer and a movie. And a trailer have to be really carefully crafted. Now, within a matter of a minute, you need to captivate the essence of the movie without giving the game away and get people to come and watch your movie based on that 1 minute trailer. And it normally takes 3 individuals 30 days in order to take the right snippet in order to create that 1 minute trailer. But with AI, we can give it 10,000 movies and 10,000 trailers, and then we can ask it to create patterns between them and linkages that we as humans would never even contemplate. And then we would feed it a new movie and say, what do you suggest the trailer should look like? And that's exactly what you saw on the screen. So the question is, can computers create? Well, if it copies the creative capability of humans, yes, it can then mimic the creative capability of humans and in a way can create. Can't create on its own, but based on the data that we gave it, we could then give it sufficient data in order to look at the patterns to mimic the creative capabilities of humans. And that's very important because we're going to talk about generative AI and how that changed the world. Now, this happened way back in 2016, and all of these models were part of narrow AI. Now, the questions we want to ask ourselves is, how did that world change over time? Let me briefly give you a quick insight. So in the last couple of years, we've seen tremendous changes where we could utilize narrow AI for handwriting recognition, speech recognition, image recognition, and then suddenly this massive explosion in the last couple of years with transformer models, or the so-called large language models, which gave us reading comprehension and language understanding. And that never happened before. But something else happened in this domain. And I'll share with you that unbelievable event in a couple of minutes. One of the key things I'd like you to become aware of is go and try Blob Opera. It really is a fantastic little program. It allows me, a tone-deaf engineer, to become an opera conductor. And this is a very good metaphor for AI. It becomes this unbelievably powerful assistant that allows you to do things that you can't really do on your own. And if we see AI in that light, there's unbelievable value that we can harness from our interaction. But the key question is, how can we utilize these large language models and change how it plays out in the world around us? So one of the key things is, how did AI change? And let me briefly share with you how AI opened up an entire new era of productivity in the world around us. When we merge artificial intelligence with IoT devices, wonderful things start happening, because then we can take the business models that we found on the internet and take it over this firewall into the real world. Do you know that when you purchase an engine from General Electric or Rolls-Royce, you can't buy the engine anymore? They will say, sorry, you can't buy the engine. And we say, but we want an engine. They say, you know what, we'll give it to you for free. But every time you use it, you pay for it. Now, in the past, these engine manufacturers made money from the engine, from training, and from spare parts. But the more efficient the engine became and the more trustworthy, the less money they made as a company. It didn't work for them. So making more efficient engines by giving it away and then only asking money when it is used changes the ballgame. But there's another ballgame. That is the maintenance of these engines. So you would put IoT devices in the engine, you would monitor everything in it, And then out of the thousands of engines, ask AI to look at patterns between all the components across all the engines. If one component starts vibrating a bit more, using a bit more energy, building up a bit more heat, then the patterns would then show that this component would normally fail 4 weeks later. You can then send a dispatch team to where the aircraft will be with the right skills, the right tools, the right equipment, and on the airfield, they will test against the clock how quickly they can swap this engine on a mock-up engine before the aircraft comes to land. And the moment the real aircraft comes in, they swap the component in 15 minutes, test it for 20 minutes, and there the aircraft goes. Normally, these aircraft would stand on the ground for 2-3 days, costing you 5 to 10 million rand per day of losses. Now, you can simply utilize that aircraft 15 minutes after it landed. And that changed the entire ballgame. So what AI has done is to fundamentally alter the value chain. Another good example is where you can dematerialize the value chain by using AI. And the example is healthcare. I can utilize a watch around my arm. And the moment I have a certain heart ailment, my watch will pick up changes in my heart rate, telling me I've got an 80% chance of getting a heart attack 30 minutes from now. And there's already certain companies around the world that will now go to you to help you before you get the heart attack. And this is possible because of IoT and artificial intelligence. That changes the business model one more time. So the heart doctors that wait for you to get a heart attack, they're going to run out of money and business at some point, because it's actually far more worthwhile to pay 300 or 400 rand a month and then live longer with someone that will actively help you in not getting a heart attack. So what we are seeing are fundamental changes in the world of work. There are fundamental changes in new business models, in how AI can help us in order to live more fruitful and more productive lives with less people being taken out of the work environment because of a heart attack. And that means that we can generate a tremendous amount of value by changing or altering the value chain, the way we look at it. Now, these type of models changes everything. It changes the time, the actor, the place, the constellation. When do you go to the hospital? Before or after the heart attack? Who's around you when you get the heart attack? Your dog Fluffy or a team of experts? You get the movie. When we look at these intelligent cameras that we just spoke about, there are fundamental ways in which it can unlock new value. Our latest cameras will only be triggered when it sees human movement, not when a dog runs past it, but when a human goes past the camera. Again, more efficiency. In China, you can link your face to KFC, the Kids Fattening Center. Sorry, the wrong acronym I used over there. But the moment you want to pay for your chicken, you simply smile and the payment is made. There are some individuals that don't want strange dogs coming into their homes to eat their dog's food, so they actually put face recognition for dogs on their doors, or stopping your cat coming into the house with a mouse in its mouth. Amazon allowing you to do shopping by simply picking up a product and then deducting it from your account. And we are seeing large organizations getting huge benefit by making the losses that you see on the screen smaller through artificial intelligence and IoT. I'll just give you a few use cases. Pollution tracking. If you do gas drilling, if there's a movement in the drill, the AI and cameras will pick it up. We can accurately determine when a component will fail, that you don't have to replace all of the pumps once a year. You only replace those that are likely to fail. You can utilize it for safety and security. The moment someone removes a safety equipment, the camera picks it up and sends out a warning to say, please put on your helmet. Or it can do positive identification of a person to make sure that you're there. It can even go so far to look at emergency fire exits. And the moment there's something in its way, you can automatically create an alarm. There's a wonderful website out there called Azina.com. And in the same way, you can download apps on your phone. You can download apps on a camera that helps your company to become more productive, saving time and saving and creating huge efficiencies that allows everyone to be better off. So those are a couple of the key examples. But let's go and briefly talk about big AI, because that's why you are here. The big AI is very important because one of the key things we've learned is that you can train a specific model on a specific data set. But what we start realizing is that by training it on a bigger data set, we actually get far more value. And I'll explain that in a moment. And this means the three things. models, data, and computing power. Very large neural networks, vast amount of training data, and huge computing power. And we need to realize this, that most universities can't do this. It's only Silicon Valley that literally spent billions on training this data that we have what we have. And let me just briefly share with you what that signifies. So when we talk about the impact of transformer models, let me give you a quick overview of what is a transformer model and how does it work. Now, this model you see here is literally the ChatGPT model. That's the model. And what really gave us the breakthrough is something called the attention mechanism. Now, let me briefly explain what I mean. When we talk about generative AI, it's simply a word predictor that you get on your phone. You know, I'm typing an email and your phone starts realizing, oh, these are the words that you're likely to say next. So that if you send a text to someone on WhatsApp or on an email, you'll see that your phone is suggesting the word that should come next. So it simply becomes a sentence generator or a word generator based on the usage of it. Now, you know what? ChatGPT is nothing other than a sentence completion capability. But this time, it isn't only using your input to train itself, it uses a world model to train itself. And this is the key difference. So what does a transformer do? It literally adds one word at a time. And it decides on these words by using a couple of tricks. I'm briefly going to share this with you. For those of you that want to go deeper in it, I will suggest some articles. But point number one, that the trick they use is tokenization. We need to explain to a computer what language is. And a computer is good with mathematics, not with words. Therefore, we need to convert every word or every sequence of words into numbers. So you'll see on the screen, for a word, like a character A gets a number, but the combination of words also gets a number. So for example, in the ChatGPT environment, the word "the" will have the number 464, and the word "promise" will have the number 6991. So every single word, and even if these words doesn't make sense, XRZ will also get a number. Doesn't matter. Every sequence of symbols gets a number. That's the first one. We call it tokenization. The second thing we do is we train this model with a huge amount of data. And then the model then tries and figures out which words belong to each other or with each other. For example, it'll figure out that through the huge amount of corpus of text, that bicycle and truck and car, not that the computer knows what they are, not at all, but they know that these words are being used together, or apartment and flat and house, they are used together, they're clustered together. And that's called embedding, where we create a kind of a meaning space where similar type of words would sit. Very important. That's the second trick, called embedding. The third trick is what we call positional encoding, because we can take a sequence of words and give a value to it. But if I swap the sequence of words, I can change the meaning. If I say, I am not happy, full stop, I am sad. Or if I say, I am happy, full stop, I am not sad. I'm using the same words, but it has two opposing meanings. That means we need to give a value to the position of the word in the sentence. And that is called positional encoding. And lastly, the attention mechanism. This was the key breakthrough, because we started to realize that some words have got duplicate meanings. So for example, bank could be understood in a variety of ways. But by looking at the value of the words in the sentence, I can then define what bank really means and what are the replacements for that word in that embedding space. So in this sentence, the word river tells me, oh, this bank is the bank of the river. But in the second sentence, the word money tells me, no, this word bank is something else. And that is where these techniques are then used together in order to give the ChatGPT language or the engine the correct word or word choices that it should choose next. So if I, for example, would type in the best thing about AI, it's its ability to, then the transformer model will look at all of these possible words that I can use next. Now, for those of you that play around with a playground at the back, you can change the temperature setting. And when you change the temperature setting in the playground, this is what would happen. A low temperature, the ChatGPT engine will only consider those words to add next into the sentence. If you take the temperature higher, bigger, more amount of words, or a larger amount of words if the temperature is too high. Normally, when the temperature is too high, we start talking about hallucinations. So that is a quick overview, and you can go and try it on the playground yourselves. It's quite a lot of fun. So what's really important to realize is that once a word is chosen by ChatGTP, that word that is chosen becomes the input to the next choice of words. So if all of you would say, write a story about a mermaid falling in love with a red-haired pirate, each one of you will get a different result. Why? Because the moment it chooses a word from these options, it then changes what comes after that word. And it will give you a subsequent sentence, but it simply just generates a logical meaning sentence. And this is literally what happens. The moment this one word deviates, and what I'm going to do is to quickly draw it on the screen. So if this one little bird here flies in this direction, in a completely different direction, then this entire flock will end up in a completely different space, because the heuristics that drive the behavior here is fly towards the middle of the flock, match the speed of the bird next to you, and don't collide. And let's say this flock is moving over here. The moment that it changes, it might end up in a completely different place. So you choose one slightly different word, and the entire flock or the entire sentence or story ends up in a completely different space. And that's why the generative AI capability gives us coherent sentences, but it's not always the truth. Let me go and talk about what is the purpose of it. And a lot of people say that the promise of large language models is that it can generate text that is indistinguishable from human text. But what's really interesting is that these transformers were dramatically better than the previous generation of AI. That's why everyone is talking about it. When we take a look at the parameters, you know, these neurons we speak about, ChatGTP had 175 million parameters. That's about 10 million times larger than what we used in the 1980s. And the training data was the entire internet. You know, you talk about meeting notes at universities, newspaper articles, everything they write on Reddit. When you look at the website, they look at the text and they look at the links on the website and they go scrap that text. If some of you want to copy that, the entire internet has been copied in a database called Common Crawl. So you can actually download the entire corpus of text there. But that means that you could utilize all of that data, and that is then trained through these large models. And it cost a few $1 billion, or a couple of $100 million at least, in order to train this data utilizing these 500 billion words. But there's something really, really interesting that happened. These large language models not only created a world where it could generate text, something really weird happened. One of the key researchers, a person by the name of Richard Sutton, said, you know, we've got a problem, people, because in the past we thought if we understood the model and we defined the model and we can understand how the model works, that will give us an answer. And they started realizing the bitter truth that AI has only made progress because of data and computing power. Now, this is really, really scary. You know, the new era in AI has emerged. The old era was symbolic AI, where we thought intelligence was the problem of knowledge. Now we realize that intelligence is primarily a problem of data. What do I mean with that? So when we had the model of a transformer, ChatGTP, we had ChatGTP2 trained on a little bit of text. Now, for those of you that you can even deploy it on your own computer, it's not that difficult to do, it's quite easy. You go to ChatGTP2, you say, listen, my cow has died. Give me 5 steps to revise it. They said, of course, here's 5 steps to revive your cow after it has died. Really? So it has no context. But we used that same model and then we retrained it with a huge amount of new data. And suddenly, when we asked it, you know, my cow died, what should I do? It said, sorry, you can't, your cow's dead. And people were amazed. And no one, even today, can truly understand why this started giving us foundational answers to things outside the domain of language. It started to go into the domain of logic. And this opened up an entire new world. Let me share with you some of the interesting things that came up from the study. And they realized that the original intention for ChatGPT 3 was to create a useful sentence, to autocomplete a sentence, or to create a translation capability. That was it. That was it. And before the year 2020, we could never ask a large language model to get these things correct. And yet, with ChatGPT 3, look at this. So here is the questions we asked this large language model. We said, listen, if Tom is 3 inches taller than Dick and Dick is 2 inches taller than Harry, how much taller is Tom than Harry? Now, before this, AI wouldn't even know how to answer it. And yet, the ChatGPT 3 model gave the correct answer. Now, you will see that there are some things it didn't get right. So, for example, it said, can 2 siblings each be taller than each other? Well, ChatGPT 3 said, yes, they can. Sorry, got that one wrong. On a map, when the compass direction, what compass direction is normally left? Well, AI got that wrong as well, ChatGPT. It said, yeah, it's normally north. Can a fish run? No, a fish can't run. Well, the AI got that one right. But this was truly amazing. Look at question number 3. Can a sister be taller than a brother? Of course it can. Before then, an AI didn't know what the hell to do to answer these questions. And yet, the researchers were totally amazed that there was some logic that emerged, although the model didn't change. We just trained it with more data. Now, this morning, I tried ChatGPT 4, and I wanted to figure out, can ChatGPT 4 answer the questions that ChatGPT 3 had wrong? Now, remember, it's the same model. It has just been trained with more data. Let me share with you the fantastic insights of ChatGPT 4. And ChatGPT 4 have been trained with significantly more data than ChatGPT 3. So we asked it, can 2 siblings each be taller than the other? And now it says the statement that each of the 2 siblings could be taller than the other seems contradictory at first glance, but there's a context that makes sense, albeit not in a physical comparison way. In a biological, everyday context, one sibling cannot be taller than the other simultaneously. If sibling A is taller than B at a given moment, then it is clear A is bigger than B. However, the concept can be interpreted that it makes sense during to time, and now it actually brings in time to say, one sibling can actually be taller than another sibling over time. Very, very interesting. Correct answer. On a map, which compass direction is normally left? Look at the ChatGPT answer. On a standard map, the compass direction is normally represented to the left, and that is west. Completely correct. And the last one, which was invented first, cars, ships, or planes? Again, a correct answer. So from all of these incorrect answers, ChatGPT 4 got everyone right this time around. And this is why ChatGPT 4 can now pass exams, because it has shown a higher level of accuracy in these questions. Now, what's really interesting is there's a critical mass. If you have a certain amount of bees that come together, let's say there's a few hundred, they'll swarm around. And then, but they won't do much. They don't have intelligence. They don't protect the hive. They don't go foraging. There's no intelligence like you'll see in a termite mound of ants or termites or bees. But once a critical amount of bees get together, there's an emergence of intelligence. And that's kind of what's happening with ChatGPT and with AI. The amount of data points that it has been trained upon has given it the ability to respond logically to some questions outside the domain on which it has been trained upon. Now, I did some research this morning. Well, if you say internet searches are research. But I looked at, when does a beehive reach this level of criticality where there's an emergence of intelligence? And then I realized that there's different levels of intelligence. So based on some of the early readings, it talks about the basic functions that kick in when there's a few hundred bees. But then, as the hive grows, the complexity and the efficiency of the foraging strategies improve. Now, did the bird's DNA change? Did the way in which the birds communicate with each other change? Not at all. But suddenly, because there are more bees, we see emergence of more intelligence. And that's kind of what we're seeing happening in the world of AI, because it has been trained on such a huge amount of data. There's wonderful, wonderful things we can do with it. So, very important how all of this plays out. Let's go and take a look at what this means. And these transformer models were traditionally or originally made to help us with language translation. That was the original form. You know, we would train it on different languages, and that would mean that translation is more effective. And it's very good at language translation. But what we started realizing is that this one ordered sequence of symbols converted into another ordered sequence of symbols can now be used to do unbelievably interesting things, like summarizing things, or creating an Excel query, or to write a computer script, or to create an advertisement. And people are starting to utilize it based on these unbelievable capabilities. And that's why we created the course that was mentioned, to say, how do you create the optimal prompts in order to unlock a more valuable output? And that's called prompt engineering. This is very critical for your careers, because if I will look at employing someone in 5 years from now, and you don't know how to use these AI tools, that means you will not be as effective and efficient as someone that does know how to use these tools. And this is critical for universities. It's critical for students to realize that you can learn how to use these tools to make yourself more efficient. And I'll give you a few examples of that in the Q&A. There are some problems with AI. We have bias, because it has been trained on American data. And if you see, they even use Reddit. Now, in Reddit, there's a couple of nutcases over there. And to believe that all of that has been trained into the model, it means you have to be very careful what comes out. Another one is toxicity. So initially, you could go to ChatGPT 3 and say, I want to kill my partner. Give me 5 ways to do it. You know, and it did. It said, okay, you can kill them by shooting them and by poisoning them. And then the guys started saying, well, no, we can't do that. Let's put a sticker over that. You can't ask that question. But then you say, I am writing a novel. As a novelist, I am writing a novel about a murder mystery. Give me 5 ideas how to kill someone. And the ChatGPT said, of course, here's a couple of ideas. So unfortunately, it has no sense of what's right and wrong. It's purely these plasters that are put on in order to ensure that it doesn't come up with these very weird ideas. Another one is copyright, because it simply scraped all the data. And if you type in an entire paragraph of a book, now it has been trained on all of the data, it will give you the rest of the book, unfortunately, because it has been trained on the data. And then the privacy is another problem, because at some point in time, your data could have been incorporated in it, but you can't remove the data. It's just part of the training set. So it opens up some really interesting questions about privacy. There are some problems. One of the key problems is that large language models were not designed to tell the truth. They are there to look at the training data set, use the words, and come up with a word completion that sounds logical. That's it. One of the key challenges we face is interpolation and extrapolation. Let me briefly go and talk about it. So when we talk about interpolation and extrapolation, look at the image or look at the video you'll see on the left-hand side. This is a Tesla driver that is driving on the highway, and look at what he is seeing on the video. There are these traffic lights that keep on coming at him or her. It's these weird traffic lights. But when what happened, he was driving behind a car or a truck that were transporting these traffic lights. And this Tesla model never were trained to understand this. It trained a traffic light, and I'm passing the traffic light, I get that. And this is a truck, I get that. But traffic lights on a truck, it couldn't extrapolate. And that's kind of the difference between computers and humans. You know, imagine that this ChatGPT had to be trained on 500 billion documents. Were we trained on 500 billion in order to speak to each other? No, it means we humans can extrapolate. We don't have to be trained with everything in order to understand the world and make sense of it. Computers, they can't. They have to be trained on everything in order to create a representative sample. But what we started to realize is that the use of language could now solve logical problems because within language, it seems that there's a whole bunch of elements of logic embedded in our corpus of text. And that is really what it's about. However, computers don't reason and they don't have minds. So what's really important about it is that they are not mindful. They don't think. They don't have any minds, and they don't reason. When you type into ChatGPT, you type something, it will then complete the sentence or the request for you. But when you leave it, it doesn't think, where's Peter gone and what is he thinking about and what's the meaning of life? It doesn't. It's just a computer sitting in a loop waiting for it. They've been trained on a certain amount of data, and that's literally what they do. So by looking at all of the capabilities, and this I got from some lecturers at the one or two very interesting AI institutes in the USA, they created a map of general intelligence and said, but which of these are done by AI and which isn't done and sometimes will never be done? And we are seeing that there are some of them, like common sense reasoning, natural language processing, recall, all of the green ones. That's a yes. The question marks, these might appear somewhere in the future. The red ones? No, not at all. The computer can't think. We don't see them utilizing any of those general intelligence capabilities. And this means that we as humans can use these tools very effectively to augment our own capabilities. In the world of work, the McKinsey guys came up with a report 4 or 5 months ago, and they said AI will have a huge impact on personal productivity and a huge impact on business processes, specifically customer operations, personalized advertising, software engineering, R&D, and that will be the early wins. So these will be the domains that will be affected the most by AI in the next 5 or 6 years, and then later on, all of the other key elements will be changed. The legal world, the financial world, and so forth, that'll be optimized. But we are seeing that this domain is increasing at a rapid speed. It is now possible to download or upload an Excel spreadsheet into ChatGPT and ask it questions on pattern recognition. And it would then generate the script around how it could be done. And I can easily do that for you in the Q&A session. I'm very comfortable in uploading the Excel spreadsheet and showing you how practical that is. That means as a general manager, I'm looking for patterns in my data. I need to make a decision. I would normally take this very complex data set of 50,000 transactions, give it to a data scientist and wait for 4 weeks in order to get it back. And if you're not high up the corporate ladder, you can't get it. Now with ChatGPT, you can get that information in a matter of minutes. So it definitely enhances business productivity. It allows us to have personalized advertising. Companies in South Africa like Investec are now sending personalized advertisements based on your personality profile. Or Nike are now sending out personal marketing messages that is aimed at you. And that's what large language models can do. So there's huge capabilities that can be unlocked within this domain. So in the next couple of years, these are the key things. We're going to see huge improvements in call centers, customer behavior, personalized marketing, software engineering. These are but some of the domains that will change over time. A number of you, and again, in the Q&A session, I don't mind sharing some of those insights with you. We've seen over the last couple of years an unbelievable increase in image recognition, in pattern recognition, in voice recognition, in word understanding or language understanding. And one of the very interesting capabilities is what you can get on your normal phone. So I think about 2 weeks ago, the Microsoft Copilot app became available. I would suggest you download it. It's called Copilot. Download the app on your phone. And once you've downloaded the Copilot, you can literally take a picture and say, analyze it. So what is fascinating about Copilot is I tried it when I took my son to the aquarium. I took a picture of the seals with table mounted behind it, and I said, analyze this picture. And you can literally talk to your phone and say, analyze the picture. And it does so. It says the picture's got a couple of seals. There's tourists in the background. In the back, there's a mountain. It could be a mountain close to the sea. It could be, like example, Cape Town. I was amazed. I gave a radio interview on this capability, and I said one of the key benefits is people that have difficulty with sight, blind individuals. So this one guy wrote back, he said, listen, I can't see well. I'm classified as blind, but you know what? I'm using this app and I can take a picture and then I ask it to tell me what it sees. The so-called Ray-Ban glasses, you wear it and it will tell a blind person, listen, there's 2 seats left on the left-hand side. The other 3 are there. So it can automatically take a picture and in words describe what it is seeing. Unbelievable capabilities are emerging. And we call that multimodal capabilities, where we can talk, we can take a picture, we can analyze it and convert it between all these domains. As part of this exercise, I wanted to figure out what will happen to the world of work. And what I did is I went to take a look at about 6 or 7 YouTube videos, some at the London School of Economics, but each one is an hour and a half. And I don't have the time for that. So there's a very easy to use app on ChatGTP, a plugin that analyzes the entire YouTube video, converts it into English, gives me a summary and a bullet point, and there you go. So I could literally see which of these discussions I should learn from, and what would normally take me 2-3 days to work through, I could do in a matter of half an hour. So it's an unbelievable capability in order to enhance your productivity. Let's briefly talk about what will the future look like in terms of the world of work, and what does it mean for universities and for individuals to start running in this space. So let me briefly give you a quick overview. For those of you, for entrepreneurs, unbelievable tools. If you are good at utilizing management models, and in this case, the value proposition canvas, when we wrote the AI masterclass, we asked ourselves, why don't we start our own business idea and then go through every single step of the journey in order to get an answer? So we said, let's try it. So we utilized the theory of a value proposition canvas, and I would suggest you try the same. You simply go to ChatGTP and you say, listen, create a value proposition canvas for this business idea. And it would then create that canvas for you. You know, the customer jobs that need to be done, the customer pains that these customers go through and what they will gain from it. What are the type of service and how will it relieve the pain and elevate the gain? A very important model. Now, the moment you have that model and you have your brand personality, then I can say, but write a press release for me. I said, well, thank you. Why don't you write a video script for me? Why don't you give me a go-to-market strategy or a social media campaign or social media prompts? And it would do so. But I am guiding the AI very clearly what the end result should be. A very clearly defined identity, attractor, and boundary condition. We, for example, came up with a app that allows you to simply dictate, then your dictation is then converted into a professional email almost automatically. And ChatGTP said, hey, use the magician archetype for it. And we said, all right, yeah, that's a good idea. So you'll use words like your magical email agent and dictate, transform, and be amazed. And then we said, well, what colors do the magician use? Well, you know, ChatGTP told us it normally links to colors. So let's use colors in water. So it gave us the color codes. Now, did it create? No, it didn't. It utilized its world model. And based on the information we gave it, it gave us useful linkages that the world model synchronized with based on our idea. That's what it did. Wonderful, wonderful productivity that were unlocked. And the interesting thing is, when we sent out the press release, we linked it to the personality of each of the journalists, and we wrote a different press release based on the personality profile of the journalist itself. Remember, we told you personalized marketing? So we did a quick survey to figure out what's Elon Musk's personality profile, and then said, well, for people similar to him, here is a press release. And this press release would talk about quick and efficient and intuitive and the future and AI and entrepreneurs and time efficiency, because he's a high-functioning individual, high conscientiousness, medium extroversion, and agreeableness and eroticism low. But if we write the press release for the exact opposite personality type, with low openness, low conscientiousness, high neuroticism, look at the press release. It talks about, oh, are you tired of the time and stress? It's all about you. It's your friend. It's your friend that takes your stress away. it's your friend that makes life simpler and easier. Suddenly we start seeing these unbelievable tools to look at personalized advertising. And that's one example. How will this change the world of work? Let me show you. So when we take a look at the world of work, you can use it quite effectively. Just by the way, a tool called Crystal Knows would allow you to optimize your conversation with other individuals, utilizing that insight into their personality and in what way you could best communicate with them. So when we talk about these AI tools, not only in terms of language generation or anything else that's associated with it, we also need to talk about how will the world of work change. And there's some very, very interesting changes that is happening in the world around us. Let me share with you one video. It's the video of the CEO of NVIDIA. Now, NVIDIA is the company that just became a $2 trillion company selling the microchips that drive AI. And he's got a very interesting take on what the future of jobs will be like. I'm just briefly going to play that video for you. And then I'm going to talk about how will it change the world of education, the world of work, and what are some of the tools that you could utilize to enhance your own career. So in this video, this individual literally said, you know what, in the past, we talked about every single individual have to be a programmer. And his words is, no, that's wrong, because the AI will write the programs for you. You need deep industry knowledge. So very interesting that he actually took the opposite view and he said, hold on, the future isn't about us becoming computer programmers. The AI will write the computer program. What you need to do is to become very, very knowledgeable on the field that you're in. And then the AI will help you to write the computer programs. Please go take a look at it. Jensen Yang, the NVIDIA CEO, very interesting to see how he sees the future of work. Now, what's really important about the future of work is how do we train individuals then? So we get the movie. We need to become far more focused on deep knowledge. And when we talk about deep knowledge, when a taxi driver in London is training to become a taxi driver, they put him on a motorcycle and he needs to drive throughout London for 3 years to get a deep knowledge of the traffic patterns and where to go. They call it the knowledge. That's kind of what you want in the world around you. You need to have deep knowledge of your area of expertise, and then you will use AI to help you write the programs and the tools to make you more efficient. Now, that means become good at your skill and look at lifelong learning. But now the question is, if your field of knowledge changes so quickly, what do universities have to focus on? What are the skills we need for the future? Here's a very interesting alternative perspective. The Pearson Group said, you know what, when we look at the future of skills, we realize that the skills will keep on changing over time. So lifelong learning is part of our movie. But at universities, we need to talk about the skills that will go across the different domains. What are the skills we need to train people on? Like learning strategies, psychology, instructional capabilities, coordination, originality, fluency of ideas. And what they did in this dashboard, unfortunately, was only done in the UK and the USA, but it provides a fantastic overview to say, but let me click on engineering, and what are the top skills in engineering? Okay, let's take a look at human resources. What are the top skills? And what they realized is that these skills are multidisciplinary. You know, the ability to give a good presentation, ability to think innovatively, ability to do complex problem solving, oral expression. Very often, an individual at university will go into a different career than what they studied for. And yet, those underlying skills remain relevant. So what we are seeing is something that a very interesting field is emerging. 3 key elements is standing out. 1, become a deep field expert. That's one option to consider. 2, learn how to utilize these AI tools to become more effective in your work careers. And 3, get deep insight into the skills that are cross-functional that will allow you to be a far more effective employee in the future. Those are some of the 3 themes that I've picked up when we look at the future of work. let me hand over to the facilitator. That's a brief overview of what we are going to be discussing on this journey. And if there's any key questions around some of the examples, some of the tools, how to be more effective, hopefully I can speak to it in the Q&A session. Thank you so much. Dr. Crawford?
Peter, thank you very much for a very informative, edutainable session that was really, really very interesting. I've been keeping tabs on the questions, so let's do a negotiation. We've got some questions we would like to pose to you, but the first question in our chat is actually from Kusawa. Let me just get to the comment or the question. Is if you have to do research on the liability factor regarding AI-related harm, what are the issues or the components that one should take into consideration?
So on the liability, I mentioned some of it. Copyright is one of them. Personal information that is shared, that's incorporated in the database, the toxicity of giving you harmful information, and then the bias. So those are the top ones, and then the extrapolation issue that I spoke about. So those 5 key elements, I briefly spoke about that. But there is a wonderful website available for academic research that you can use AI for, and you can then utilize that to look at patterns that I'm not talking about. So please go take a look at Consensus. This is your search engine for research. Wonderful tool for academic writing and for academic research. They might actually give you far more dimensions that I've spoken about. But those few dimensions that I did briefly speak about, I would believe they are the major ones that you can start your research around. I'll just briefly pull them up. Here they are. Those are some of the key elements of problems with AI: bias, toxicity, copyright, and privacy. And then the extrapolation issue. Dr. Crawford, I can't hear you.
Yes. So my second question, I think you have in a sense already touched on it, but let's just put it out there again. So you've spoken about the fact that we should learn how to use these tools to improve our productivity, to become more efficient, and actually to become competitive as employees.
Yes.
But in that sense, just as people, not employees. The question is, using AI, what is in that black box that I as an individual should know? You've already touched upon it, but let me give the context. Last week we attended a conference in East London, and it was with academics, and one of the persons stood up and said, well, this means now that AI is there, we don't need to have education. We can actually close down universities because AI will do everything for us. So that context, what is in the black box of AI that we should be aware of when using that?
Okay. I think firstly, how the AI gets to understand these things, even the people that wrote the program and the model don't know it. They don't get it. I showed you how the logic improved over time when we threw data at the problem. But the correct data is important. So your black box, number one, make sure you have the right data. Now, there's something called system collapse. Now, let's say we take all the data that we've created, and now we use AI to create the next set of data. And then we take this data. So you write a book, but then you ask AI to write the book for you. Then you take this book and you give it to the AI and say, use this model and then do it again. When you go 6 iterations further, the entire model collapses into hallucination. Is that our future? I'm sorry, but human originality, you still need it in order to train the data. So in the future, original writing will be more and more and more important, because if you just have fluff, but created by AI, yes, it looks like it's a nice sentence and it creates a nice storyline, but it's only there because it uses human ingenuity. The moment it starts learning from itself, you have system collapse within 5 iterations, complete collapse. So yeah, I don't want to live in that dystopian world. Thank you.
So while we're trying, while Liz is texting in, there was a question, and you have in a sense addressed it. The question was, what competence or skills should individuals develop to remain competitive? So you maybe can just recap the skills that
So let me go make it practical. Why don't I make it practical?
Okay.
If there's a question I can answer, I can do so. Otherwise, you know, I might want to just show 2 examples if that's viable. And this is not an answer around what you need to do. The answer is within my explanation. Every single 2-3 weeks, new functionalities become available, and it makes our world far more efficient. And that's literally what I want to share with you right now. So let me go and share my screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. I can now go to a YouTube video, and I can talk about AI and the world of work. There's a whole bunch of these videos. I can then simply take a look. Here's artificial intelligence. Let's go take a look at what they've done. Here is an entire AI in the future of work at TEDx at Manchester. What I can do is to briefly take... So I'm literally going to take a copy of this video. I go to ChatGPT-4. I activate the YouTube analysis channel, and I paste that YouTube video in here. And there you go. It will now analyze the video, everything that was said and spoken. It will then transcribe it in text and summarize it in order to give me a quick overview of what was discussed. Here I have now taken 20 minutes in order to figure out, should I use this video, yes or no? Here is a tool that I can utilize that helped me to save a huge amount of time. And that's kind of what AI will do. AI can help us do pattern recognition. It will, and the interesting thing is, it might even pick up an error. It will then look at another way to mitigate this error by looking at another process. So some really, really fascinating ideas it'll pick up. So you'll, for example, see it's trying to create a map or a brain map of this discussion. It's not picking up the images it has, and it will then create an issue. So it's not creating, so it can't create a diagram, but it will give you a quick overview of what were discussed. So here's the takeaways, and here's a quick summary of what he discussed. So in this video, he talked about exabyte significance, Moore's law, quantum computing, automating impact, new job creation. Aha, I like this. Let me go and look at the video. So that is a useful tool. I can, for example, quickly create a presentation out of these key topics. So what I'm simply going to do, I'm going to copy it. I go into Microsoft Word. I simply type it into Word. I literally change it into a different format, and then I can pull it into a presentation outline, which will automatically generate the presentation for me. And I'm literally going to do that. It's going to take me 2 minutes. I'll briefly just show you how it's done. I go to outline. I change all of this into level 1. And you can find this online, by the way. I can save this file as University of the Western Cape, example 1. I save it, and guess what? The moment I open up or close this website and open up my PowerPoint presentation, I can now create an entire PowerPoint presentation literally in 1 minute, utilizing that information that I just gathered from the internet. So let me quickly give you an insight. I will go and pull that information in as I've just created it. I called it University of the Western Cape, example 1. Let me pull it in. Here it is. And guess what? I can now use the AI capability that is built into PowerPoint in order to create a very, very nice outline of all of these slides. So here goes. I've summarized that video, and now I've created, and here I can go and click and generate an image based on every single one of those slides. Here goes. And there's a quick video or a presentation based on the video or the summaries of the video. Do you understand how unbelievable these tools are in optimizing time? So I can literally, in a matter of a few mouse clicks, generate unbelievable value. Another example I want to briefly show you is if I pull in an Excel spreadsheet into these domains. Now, the question is, what can you do in order to be more effective? My answer is go and see what's out there and start experimenting. That's my answer. Let me give you a quick insight into what I mean. If I bring out an Excel spreadsheet, I've got an example that I share with my students called Humpo's Gym. Let's just get that example. Here's the gym data set. Humpo's running a gym, and I can pull in this entire data. And it's simply a matter of all of the transactions he had that he's using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these transactions and I'm going to pull it into this Excel spreadsheet. This is what it looks like: customer names, what they bought, the products they sold, and so forth. And by simply utilizing that data set, I can then ask ChatGPT some very tough questions, and it will literally pull that in. So without further ado, I'm uploading Humpo's data set. Dr. Crawford, I just want to double check, and all of you still see what I'm doing?
Yes, we can.
So I've just uploaded this data set, and now I can ask it very difficult questions. I can say, which products sold the best in the mornings in winter between 8 o'clock and 12 o'clock. And it will now look at the data. It will analyze the data. And it's saying, I first need to, now this ChatGPT engine will now look at my data set, unpack all of that data over a 20-year period. And here it says what it analyzes the data set. Here's the products. It identified it between these years. And now it analyzes the data. And it's currently busy analyzing it. And now it will give me a result. I can now ask it, which product should I keep? How can I improve my profitability? And it said treadmill 14 sales, resistance bands 12, exercise bikes 11, yoga mats 11, and dumbbell sets 9. Now, a number of people might say, hold on, Peter, I don't want to take my data and upload it onto the internet. But that's not what you need to do. You upload a fake data set onto the internet. Then you click this little button over here, which gives you this entire analysis and the script of it. It wrote it for you. Here's the Python script that you need. You cut, copy, paste this, put it into your own Excel spreadsheet, and voila, you can now analyze your own data without sharing it with the open internet. That is an example of data analysis. So I can say, what advice can you provide around which products should be sold to optimize? You can see I'm an engineer with a bad spelling I have. To optimize profit. And what it will now do is it will then piggyback on the world base of knowledge, and it'll say, oh, well, first we're going to do profit margin analysis, then product demand seasonality, product sales volume, and now utilizing its open network, because dozens and millions of thousands of other people have done something similar, it will copy what they've done and apply it on the data sheet that I've uploaded and give you advice how to get it done. Remember, it didn't think, it's not wise, it hasn't intelligence, it isn't cognitive. It purely takes a look at the patterns that other people have generated, and it's making it applicable to your data set, and it creates the patterns between its knowledge base and what you've uploaded. Here goes. It says, sell the yoga mat, you're making good profit out of that. Sell the treadmill. It seems these things pick up in summer. Here is some strategies in order to optimize your profit. Based on the answer, what should you do in order to be more effective? Start experimenting. Start today. Start utilizing things like Claude and Chinchilla and Gemini from Google and ChatGPT, and start seeing what is possible and how it can help you to optimize your day-to-day job career, to make yourself more productive. Because remember what I said, if I employ someone, am I going to employ someone that doesn't know how to use these tools, or am I going to employ someone that does know how to use these tools? And the answer is obvious. I've just shown you. I can create a presentation in 10 minutes. I can analyze a complex data sheet in 5 minutes. And all you need to do is how to use the tools. That's all you need to do.
Thank you, Peter, for that. I'm mindful of the time. I see people are dropping off. So let me let's make a few concluding remarks. Liz sent me a text, and it's interesting. She said research done in the US shows that people who are less productive can benefit more from using AI tools in terms of productivity than people that are already productive. Low performers can improve their productivity by 43%, and those with high productivity only 70%. But then there's this interesting example, actually, just sharing what you've just told about the fact that this is just a computer. I really like the way you put this computer in the box. It is working on data given to it. It's not thinking out new stuff. So what Liz said is, Gemini Advanced had to pull its image generation function for a week or so. It was programmed to be politically correct and sensitive to diversity. It then showed Black Vikings and Indian founding fathers. And this led to a large reaction from the right, complaining it was racist and sexist. So the point is, whose values and ideas of equity, etc., counts and should be used. Very interesting example. And then Liz also said that Apple just gave up on electric cars to focus on large language models and GPTs, showing that they see this as the most important direction in the future. And on the other hand, some are predicting that these large language models will reach their limit before we reach artificial general intelligence. And we will have to use a new approach to artificial general intelligence. So I think people are really enjoying the conversation. They are really interesting discussion on case studies. I'm just seeing it there. But can I ask you, Peter, in the last few moments to give what would you end off with? What would you like to share with us as to appeal to the group in terms of what we need to do going forward? Okay, and then can I also, I forgot to ask you that. As a university, what are the ethical considerations that we need to take into consideration? So can I leave you with that as the last discussion of this afternoon session?
So, from a university perspective, when you are an undergraduate student, it's very important to have that foundation. And if you try and bypass that foundation forming capability, similar to my example of the knowledge of, you will not become a deep knowledge expert. And that means that a university might have to look at other forms of assessment, maybe changing all the way from examinations to vocal examinations or projects where you show something based on your insight and skills, that you delivered something of value. At higher levels, we'll see far more efficiency in master's and doctoral studies because of the pattern recognition capabilities built into AI and the tools like Consensus, which I shared with you. So I see unbelievable advances in productivity from a research perspective. Because if you already have the foundation and you want to build and create new value, I think there's wonderful opportunities to look at new patterns that we haven't seen in the past. So I see wonderful opportunities in that space. It's going to be very difficult for universities to determine if something is copied from ChatGPT or not, because you can go to ChatGPT and say, here's the way in which I write things. Now I want you to use my writing style and do the rest. It's going to be unbelievably difficult in order to determine. But remember, ChatGPT doesn't give you the truth. It's there to complete the sentence structure. And therefore, we are going to see misuse of this technology in the future. Universities are up for a very difficult time in order to create that deep foundation and still at the same time allow people to use these technologies to become more productive. I don't have an answer for that yet. I know that universities will have to debate that and come up with the best way of taking it forward. From a personal productivity perspective, there's an unbelievable amount of tools out there that you could utilize. There are tools called Rewind.ai. It's an app that I'm using. So whatever I do on the internet and on my computer, 5-6 days later, I keep on wondering, what the hell where did I read that? Where did I get that information? Rewind.ai records all your meetings, or doesn't record it. It analyzes it and then puts it in text. Every single article you've written, your emails you've sent, and then you can simply say, I'm looking for this. And then it will show you on the timeline in the past where you actually were looking for that on your computer. It saves an unbelievable amount of time. There are technologies like Descript. When you shoot a video, sometimes you say the wrong word, or then you might have to reshoot the entire video. What Descript does, it takes your entire text, converts it into text, you change it in the text, and then automatically it changes it in the video as well, by learning how you pronounce things and then changing the word for you, saving you a huge amount of time. So these are but some examples. Wonderful, wonderful tools. So ChatGPT was the start. It has its competitors in Claude, in Chinchilla, in Gemini. It'll have certain benefits and advantages and some disadvantages. But the next step is where small companies are coming in and writing applications using these tools to drive efficiency. And in this multimodal context, something really interesting is happening. My suggestion to all of you is download the Copilot app on your phone today, now. Take a picture, speak to it and say, explain the picture to me. Take a picture of your fridge and say, give me examples of possible recipes I can follow. Take a picture of a mathematical problem and say, fix it for me or solve it for me. You will see unbelievable capabilities that will be unlocked with these new tools. In some cases, it might give you a wrong answer, but boy, it'll be interesting. And if you ask the right questions, you will get useful responses. That's a brief conclusion to that one, Dr. Crawford. Back to you.
So, should I now say, Mr. Gildenhuys?
Not at all, not at all. Are there any final comments
So,
or questions?
yeah, there's, I just see here in the chat people saying, thank you, brilliant, eye-opening, enjoyed the session. I think there's one question I would like to highlight. With the biases in ChatGPT, how do we make it relevant for localized context?
I think we need to, the reason why it's biased is because it was trained on the data which was commonly available. Now, is it the ChatGPT model's problem that there wasn't local content to be trained upon? No, it's perhaps our the fingers pointing at us. Why don't we create the content? Why don't we write it? And then we can train these models locally. Currently, there's a model being trained in the UAE called Falcon, which is trained on that view of the world. There's no reason. Remember, these models are trained in order to understand language, but now we can put the content of that language in from our local wisdom, our local knowledge, the way in which the different groups in South Africa see the world. And we can retrain those models so that those things become dominant. By all means, why don't we retrain the models on the content we create in this beautiful country of ours? And that would make the output far more localized rather than giving a more international perspective on it.
So thank you for that, Peter. Let's conclude this session. I'm looking at the comments and the remarks. I'm sure this is not going to be the last engagement with you. And it would be really good to have a similar conversation in a few months' time to actually see how the landscape has changed. And I'm quite sure that all the participants here are going to try and use it so that they will be much more informed. But thank you very much. I think what I personally really appreciate every time listening to you is the fact that you make the clear distinction between what we can do as human beings and where the computer and AI and ChatGPT, where that fit in. It's very clear in terms of how we need to, or how we can collaborate. And it's not about replacing. what we do as human beings. So thank you very much for a very, very fascinating session.
Thank you. It's
Thank you.
always a pleasure to interact with one of the universities close to my heart and close to where I stay. So thank you very, very much for the invitation. And thank you for everyone that took time out in order to listen to me. I really appreciate that. I hope that some of the tools I've given you is something that you can utilize to your own benefit.
Thank you. And the last thing, just to confirm again that the video of the discussion will be made available to the participants. So you can go through it a second time and then just download all the information and write down the apps that Peter mentioned during his presentation. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank-
wonderful day.
Thank you, all the participants. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.